Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Ball to Bennett, he does! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for May the 14th, episode number 1748, where I freaked out and started the show early. Went to get a cup of coffee and came back and misread the top of the screen. I don't know if you'd call that premature button pushing, but we're starting just a couple of minutes early, and that gives me a chance to tell all of you about my good friend Chris Payne at Nana's Porch, the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area. Before I do that, let me tell you, in just a few minutes, we have a great show lined up. Our good friend John Whittle from thebigspur.com will be my special guest, and we're looking forward to catching up with him and talking Gamecock Baseball or Gamecock Softball, hopefully some men's basketball, and maybe a little football at the end if we are able to squeeze it in. Top of the morning, Craig. Good to have everybody with us. My good friend Chris Payne at Nana's Porch in Charlotte. If you were at the Carolina Rise tailgate prior to the North Carolina game, what a magnificent spread he laid out. Great music. One of the members of Hootie and the Blowfish provided that entertainment. And then we found out we didn't have an offensive line that could protect Spencer Rattler. But the food sure was great. The pimento cheese was great. And so if you have a catering event coming up, go to nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne. They are your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a birthday party, an anniversary celebration, a corporate event. Maybe it's dropping off food for a rehearsal dinner prior to the wedding. Maybe it's the wedding reception. Or maybe it's just a special family occasion. And even if you don't have a catering event, go to the homepage, nanasporch.com, NANASPORCH.com. And while you're there, you can order plenty of Nana's Porch award-winning pimento cheese. And the toughest part of the process is just figuring out how many containers of each flavor do I want to buy? How many smoky jalapenos? How many of the great regular flavor? It's affordably priced. Shipping is free of charge. They'll ship it right to your front doorstep if you're in the Carolinas, generally within 2 days of placing your order. And then checkout is simple, safe, and secure. Nana's Porch award-winning pimento cheese. You'll love it. I guarantee it. All right, some news notes and headlines before we are joined by the incomparable John Whittle, the dean of Gamecock sports coverage. He's been doing it longer than anybody else. I guess maybe Dave Cloninger may be the only one that has been doing it longer than John. Former Gamecock punter and All-American Kai Kroger, he signed yesterday with the New York Jets. We'll have to ask John about that. That's his favorite team, along with Teddy Hefner. Jets, Jets. I think they got a guy that could end up in the Hall of Fame. CBS Sports has 10 team fits for rookies in order, counting it down from number 10 back to number 1, TJ Sanders, who was a second-round pick of the Buffalo Bills. He was number 9. My Atlanta Falcons had the number 4 guy on that list, defensive end James Pierce from Charlotte, who the Gamecocks fought Tennessee until the bitter end for. And coming in at number 1, another second-rounder, not a surprise, Nick Eamon-Wari, I think was the biggest freak athlete in the NFL draft with the Seattle Seahawks. I expect all those guys will be starters. One women's basketball note to pass along. Last weekend, the number 1 player in the country for 2026, 6'2" guard Sanaya Hall, posted pictures of her on her official visit to South Carolina. That's right. Basketball players can make official visits in the spring of their junior year, and then they can make another round of visits in their senior year. Hall, along with current Gamecock signee and McDonald's All-American Agot McKeer, led Montverde Academy to the national championship game. Sanaya Hall had 20 points in that game. She's a native of Ohio. She's also visited North Carolina. She's visited Southern Cal and UCLA. I think South Carolina is right in the thick of it for Sanaya Hall. You've got, I don't know if she's related to the first family of Gamecock women's basketball. Well, I'll say the second family. The first family is the Wilson family. But the Hall family, I'm talking about Breezy Hall and her parents. Got to know her dad Brian a little bit, and her lovely mom. And she has a younger sister, Brooklyn Hall. So at Ohio, she is the number 1 player in the country for this class. And so we will see what happens with her. And so also I want to get John's thoughts on Ross Dellinger's report on 9 SEC games and the new potential 16-team format for the college football playoff in 2026. Give me just a second. I forgot to do something to give us a little better coverage, and I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's not a glitch. 15 seconds. I'll be back. All right, how was that? Not too bad. All right, we'll also get into a little Gamecock I forgot what I said. Gamecock Softball will be a top 8 national seed for the first time, and we'll talk about that. And we welcome in from the capital city, from the back porch of the lovely Whittle Estates, our good friend John Whittle from the BigSpur.com, the dean of Gamecock sports coverage. John, the only guy I can think of that's covered the beat longer than you is maybe Dave. Was Dave Kleininger doing it before we started?
Yeah, Kleininger's been doing it for forever. I've been doing it forever too, but not quite as long as he has. He has a few years on me. He's been in a lot more places. I've just been at one stop. We've got a couple of TV guys who aren't like beat writers, but a couple of TV reporters who have been at it a little bit longer than me. Yeah, Rick Henry, Reggie Anderson from WLTX. I think that's it. There may be one more out there that I'm forgetting about, but yeah, I've been around for a bit now.
Well, that's good. That just means so. Hey, I got to ask you, because I didn't get to see the interview this morning, Bill Belichick with Michael Strahan on Good Morning America, but I'm kind of like the meme of Stephen Colbert with the big popcorn container. I just can't get enough of it. And I'm talking about the soap opera that is currently in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, although maybe not for much longer.
Yeah, being a Jets fan like I am, I'm not really a big Belichick guy. A lot of respect for him for what he did at the NFL level, but I haven't followed it real closely because I'm not really all that interested, to be honest with you. I'm kind of the opposite, I guess, of where you are. I've not really a huge fan, so don't really pay close attention, but I do laugh whenever I see one of these stories come across.
So, in case you missed it, Jordan, the girlfriend, 24 years old. Here's an interesting connection. Lulu Kesson from the Greenville News, her boyfriend went to high school with Jordan. And so at any rate, she's been banned from the UNC football offices and facilities. And Pablo Torre, who is a reputable national journalist, he's on ESPN. Sometimes he comes on Morning Joe to talk with Joe and Willie. He's saying does not go along with this. If they don't rescind this, come June the 1st, Bill Belichick could just write them a check for $1 million and ride off into the sunset. What are your thoughts on that?
When he got hired, I think there were a lot of folks who didn't think that he would make it, to the first game. I figured he'd at least make it a year. I didn't think he would last any longer than that, but I guess it wasn't a stretch before this thing even started with her that it may end early and may end up poorly for Belichick at North Carolina as a whole. I mean, that was before anybody even knew who she was. So at least, or the problem she was. I guess everybody's known who she was for a while, but the problem that she was, I think folks were just thinking about it from a recruiting and transfer portal piece that, Belichick, a roster management piece that Belichick wouldn't want to stay very long. But now you throw this piece into place, and obviously it's not going to work out for the long term. But that's their problem up there. There are enough problems down here.
That is true. So one problem we don't have is Kai Kroger signed with you and Teddy Hefner, your favorite team, the New York Jets, Jets, Jets. John, I think nobody hardly is going to talk about that except Gamecock fans, but I think he could have a potentially Hall of Fame career, or at least a long, prosperous career in the National Football League. He's just, he's kind of one of a kind.
Yeah, and I think he's a great punter. I thought there was a outside shot that he got drafted. I forgot to go back and look. What was there? One punter drafted, maybe. There's usually only a couple or few that are picked, and I thought Kroger had a chance to be one of them. I personally hope he doesn't ever have to punt next year. I hope he's just holding on field goals or extra points next year versus punting very often. But it'll be nice to have him in a Jets uniform for sure.
Yeah, I got a feeling the Jets may be punting a lot next year, so he may have to punt a good bit as well. All right, so John, let's get into it. You've covered Gamecock baseball extensively. I consider you the dean of Gamecock baseball. When I had you on right before the start of the season to preview the season, we knew this team was not going to put up a lot of runs. I don't think either one of us could foresee it going off the rails like it did. I know there's still 3 games left in the regular season in the SEC against LSU. I guess the only thing South Carolina can say is they're one of 2 teams to go perfect in the midweek against mid-major teams, albeit they had to come from, I think, 5-1 down to beat Winthrop 6-5, thanks to a bases loaded, bases clearing double by Bo Hollins. So they're 5-22 in the SEC. They got swept by Clemson. They lost to North Carolina. That's their only midweek loss. But this is going to be a historically bad season. How did we get here?
Just a bunch of poor performances all around. The talent level was never like crazy good. It was never one that was going to compete, for any type of championship. And, I don't think anybody has really thought as much. When we got on here to start the season, and, whether it was what I was writing on the Big Spur or, talking wherever else, the expectations were never like crazy high. I had it predicted a sub 500 record in the SEC and thought they would probably be in that kind of 10 to 12 range, bottom half of the league. Expectations weren't crazy. I thought, South Carolina would probably be in the NCAA tournament and probably pretty comfortably. If you're 10, 11, 12 in the SEC, you're pretty much getting in. their D1 baseball is not going to project Texas A&M in today, but the other 13 teams will be in besides Texas A&M, South Carolina, and Missouri. So, I thought South Carolina would be relatively comfortably into the tournament as a 2 seed and traveling somewhere, maybe a 3 seed. But, you haven't hit. I mean, I just kind of look at it this way, like the guys who came back performed it performed worse than what they did, last year. And the guys that you've brought in, they haven't really performed up to expectations. It's a lot easier to measure, what a guy did last year versus this year and see that they've fallen off. It's a little bit more difficult when you look at, expectations for guys and then not living up to it. I mean, you can see that anytime in any sport, guys overachieve or underachieve based on what you think you're going to do. But I mean, you got Brandon Stone, for example, who, was the number 1 junior college prospect in the country, regardless of position. And, he hasn't played very well. I mean, at the end of the day, he's got a 6.22 ERA overall, and he's got a he's got an 8.42 ERA in the SEC. Like, that's not what he was brought in here to do. So, it's the players have performed by and large well below expectations. Some of them have been a little bit better, but most of them have not. And, when that's a common theme, you've got to look at, what's going on around them from a coaching standpoint. And I think that's been a big deal. But, it was never an overly talented team when compared to other schools in the SEC. But, they've performed vastly below the expectations. So it's been really disappointing.
All right. So when Paul Maneri came in, he said he had a 1-year plan to turn this thing around, and obviously he turned it around in the wrong direction. I mean, he brought in his longtime assistant, the guy that replaced Brian O'Connor when he got the Virginia job at Notre Dame, and then took him to LSU, Terry Rooney, as pitching coach. How would you assess the job that he's done this season?
Well, and just to address the comment before that, like when a coach says he's got a 1-year plan, like, I mean, that's common for a coach to say. So to me, that's not too damning. But for just to make that blanket statement at the same time, like, he talked very often about having good enough talent around here. And I'm not talking about just when he took the job, but I'm talking about going into the season. He scoffed and made fun of the people who picked South Carolina to finish near the bottom of the SEC. So you don't really get to change your mind after doing something like that and say, this is where we should be. He cited very specific things when he first got the job as to why he thought that things weren't too far off. And I don't think the guy, I won't say I think, I know that the guy wouldn't have taken the job if South Carolina was way far away from being able to be competitive. Like, he was 66 years old at the time he took the job. He had been in retirement. Now he wanted to get back into coaching, but he wasn't going to go into a place where he had to rebuild. So he wouldn't have taken the job. He wouldn't have taken the job if South Carolina was at this point this year and he were sitting on the sidelines, and he was offered this job after this season. He wouldn't have touched it with a 39.5-foot pole. Like, he wouldn't have done it. So it's gotten to this point. It wasn't at this point. And, that's what's really disappointing. Like, now you have a a 67-year-old coach who's got to rebuild the program from the bottom up, and the program wasn't at the bottom when he took over. But, to answer your question specifically about Terry, like, South Carolina's been really blessed with great pitching coaches. And I know that there have been coaches that, like, individual people don't like for whatever reason, or thought were overrated or not very good or whatever. But the bottom line is South Carolina's been really blessed with really good pitching coaches. I mean, Jerry Myers is a head coach, has been a head coach now a couple of times actually since he left South Carolina. Skylar Meade is a head coach at Troy. Justin Parker went on to Mississippi State. He's the interim head coach right now and has been really successful. Just beat Ole Miss 2-3, swept Kentucky the weekend before that. Matt Williams, he was only here for a year. I haven't looked at the updated stats for him, but going into last weekend, his team had the 5th best ERA in the country at Coastal Carolina. Like, South Carolina's been really blessed. And Mark Calvey, how could I forget Mark Calvey, national championship winner, head coach at South Alabama. I mean, South Carolina's been blessed with great pitching coaches going back to the day Ray Tanner set foot on campus. So we're not used to having a guy who stinks. But, I mean, that's the bottom line of it. And, again, it wasn't the most talented pitching staff. It wasn't a pitching staff that was overwhelming you with velocity. Now, some of them have some velocity. I mean, Jake McCoy's out there throwing 97 the other day against Auburn. Right. Some of these other guys, Brendan Sweeney's topped out at 97 in scrimmages. He hasn't been hitting that very often in season. There's several guys who are throwing 93, 94. So you've got some power in there if you use it and use it properly. But you just look at what some of these guys did last year compared to what they're doing this year, and they're just not performing up to their capability. Parker Marlotte's the only one who you can look at the stats and say, he's made a jump from last year to this year. And that's really just from a stats standpoint. I think there are a couple of guys, if you talk to them, they're really disappointed in some of their numbers. Like Jake McCoy is about the same in some ways as last year, a little bit better in some ways, a little bit worse. But I mean, I can tell you right now, he would tell you that he should be a lot better than where he is. Same with Parker Marlotte. But Roman Kimball doesn't even pitch anymore, and I think it was pretty much a consensus feeling last year that Roman Kimball, who started 3 games in the SEC, pitched in I think 6 or 7 more. He had a role. He had a legitimate big role for last year's team, and I think it was pretty widely thought that he didn't pitch all that great. But if you take his ERA from last year and move it on to this year's roster, it's the 3rd best ERA in the SEC. If he would have put up last year's numbers this year, 6.75 ERA in SEC play last year, and only 2 have better than that this season for the Gamecocks. So. It's I don't know. It's Terry's not the guy, but that's Paul's guy, as you mentioned. We'll see what happens this offseason. I anticipate that if Paul Maneri's the head coach, that Terry Rooney is still going to be the pitching coach. But I guess we'll see what happens when that comes about here, in a couple of weeks.
So last night on our Gone in Black Town Hall, I mentioned that I kind of compared it to Brad Scott and Wally Burnham, how, it was not working out for Wally Burnham. Mike McGee said, "Hey, I want to see you succeed. I'll write you a blank check. You can go hire anybody you want." And he's like, "No, I'm keeping Wally." And then he brought in Chuck Reedy and Woody McCorvey and abandoned the Tannehill fast break offense to try to go to ground and pound to save Wally. And I mean, I kind of have that feeling that Paul Maneri is willing to die on that hill with his guy. I guess you kind of get that same sense on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Listen, I would say this probably for any first year coach at South Carolina. Like, I don't know Paul well enough necessarily to know what his ins and outs are. I don't have that relationship with him at this point to know what the ins and outs of his thoughts are in terms of what he's going to do with his staff after the season. And I don't know that I've ever had a relationship with any first year coach to where I think I would know some of that type of insight. So I can't sit here and tell you exactly what he's thinking. It would be surprising to me if based on what I know about him in his past and his belief in Terry and, what he said at early press conferences about, not coming here to take this job if Terry Rooney wasn't coming with him. He made a comment last week about how he and Terry know how to build a roster that can compete at a championship level. Reading just the tea leaves, I wouldn't think that he parts company with him. I wouldn't think that he even takes him out of the pitching coach role. I think that would probably be the most likely thing to happen, but I don't even think that's going to happen. So, but we'll see here in a couple of weeks, I guess. I guess they're going to have to – everybody's going to have to make some decisions after the SEC tournament.
So, I mean, how do they fix it? I mean, allegedly, and you would know better than me, but there's, been a lot of numbers thrown around about how much more NIL money the baseball team had for this team than the previous team. Now revenue sharing is going to come in and schools will get to divide it any way they want to. I mean, can Paul Maneri fix it? Can he survive? Should he survive? I mean, to me, it kind of seems untenable. I'm not trying to get you in trouble or anything, but I mean, how do they fix it? Because I don't know if they can fix it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. We figured out, this past off season with Lamont Paris that when you have a season that is that bad, it's harder to get players. And, even with more money, like, would you rather come to South Carolina and get X amount of dollars or, go to Ole Miss and take the same amount of dollars or even a 20% pay cut? Like, I mean, if you go to Ole Miss, you feel like you got a better chance of winning. And in one hand, the money is important, but in the other hand, so is having a chance to compete. And, I don't know that you're going to feel like you have a chance to compete, if you come to South Carolina and you have other options at other SEC schools. Obviously you're probably going to come to South Carolina if your choice is, South Carolina or I don't know, Campbell. But it's you're having to pay a premium for being so bad, basically. And, we found that out in basketball with Paris this past off season. I think we're gonna see it in baseball this coming off season with South Carolina. But at the same time, as you mentioned, with revenue share, assuming all that passes, now we're making the assumption that house settlement is gonna go through, and the collective money and that big pot of unchecked dollars. We're going to assume all that goes away, and you have just the percentage of revenue share. Now we'll see what that number ultimately ends up being. South Carolina, from a standard practice, is going to fund baseball at a rate very similar to what it was in 2024 for that 2024 team. Now this year's team, this 2025 team, they spent about 4 times, a little bit more than 4 times the amount of money on this year's team as they did last year's team. Now there's been some thought and there's been some going back and forth, and it's happened recently, not just in the past, but recently, as in previous weeks, not in previous months. They've been going back and forth on, how much revenue share do we want to give to the baseball program? Now, do we fund it like we were going to fund it, or do we overfund it compared to most SEC schools to try to buy this huge roster and great talented roster and try to buy our way out of this hole? And we'll see what comes to pass in terms of where the administration ends on that. To me, you were given so much money last year and you just didn't spend it well. Do you really trust this staff with that type of money to go out and buy yourself a good team, or do you not? That's an answer, or that's a question that I would have an opinion on, but I don't have the answer for in terms of the administration. So we'll see what ends up happening. So to answer your question, how do you get out of this? To me, how do you get out of this? You got to bring in better players because you're going to lose a lot of good players. You got to recruit you've got to recruit better players, and that even Rooney and Maneri identified this past offseason. They brought in some players too that weren't very good, or haven't lived up to expectations, however you want to view it. So I don't know. It's hard to sit here and tell you this is the path of being great, because it's really hard to see one.
I know if I was recruiting against South Carolina, I would use the fact that, hey, look, why do you want to go there? Okay, they got a soon-to-be 68-year-old. He'll be a 68-year-old coach that came out of retirement, who had most likely the worst season in school history. Probably, ends up 5-26 if you count the tournament game in the SEC. Why in the world would you want to go there? Because in a year from now, he's going to be gone. I know Jeremiah Donati's got a tough decision, but this is just my opinion. I just think you dig the hole deeper if you bring it in. This is not like Lou Holtz, his first year. Yes, they went 0-11, but there were a lot of NFL dudes that were young players that Brad Lowen and Rick Petrie and Buddy Pugh had recruited, and they had a lot of injuries as well. And Lou Holtz and Dave Roberts and those guys brought in Derek Watson and Pennick and Shane Hall and Langston Moore and guys like that, and they turned it around. I just don't think it's even close to being that way right now at South Carolina.
Yeah, you're right, and it's certainly a different era now than what it was back then. You sometimes you had to stick with it through the tough times. And, sometimes you have to do that now, and you can flip a roster much more easily than this year in this time than you could at that time. But, Paul Maneri's been out of coaching for a little while, and for 3 years coming into this, and he hadn't had to deal with NIL and the transfer portal. And, I wrote on the Big Spur message board the other day that, one of their best pitchers on this year's staff, and last year's staff for that matter, he came back and they forgot to assign him any money from an NIL standpoint. and give him any money from an NIL standpoint. And, so he's pitched all this year with $0, on that he's got coming in. And, most of these guys have some money coming in. And, there's probably getting close to 10, not quite 10, but getting close to 10 who are making six figures. So, it's like they haven't handled so much of any of this very well. And, it's just, I don't know. There, like I said, there's not a whole lot that points to encouragement for next year. So I don't know. There's just not a whole lot that points to a reason to be encouraged.
I agree. So softball is the complete opposite of what we just talked about. Gamecock Softball, first-year head coach, former Gamecock player Ashley Chastain Woodard comes from Charlotte. She brings like 4 players with her from Charlotte. She brings in basically end-of-the-bench player from Oklahoma who was a middle infielder. She converts to a center fielder, Quincy Lilio, who hit .373 and led the team with 43 walks, the second most in a regular season. Ariana Roddy, an All-American at Charlotte. She hit .333 and set a program record for home runs and walks. South Carolina is a top 8 national seed for the first time. You'd think certainly Ashley Chastain Woodard would be SEC Coach of the Year because she only has one player that made the first team All SEC, one player that made the defensive team, and that's the same player, pitcher Sam Grass, who transferred from Charlotte. I mean, surely with no players other than one that's worthy, you're a top 8 national seed. She's the Coach of the Year, but she's not, because they gave it to the head coach at Oklahoma, who's arguably had her worst regular season in like the past 6 years.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. South Carolina was picked last in the league, and at the time of that voting was done, like they didn't know, the people voting, the coaches didn't know that South Carolina was going to be a national seed, right? So like, you got to take that factor out of it. You look at it and see that South Carolina finishes 7th in the SEC. So, I don't guess it's very often that a coach who finishes 7th in the league wins Coach of the Year. But if there was ever a time, this certainly seems like it would be the time. I thought she absolutely should have been Coach of the Year for the reasons you cited. And as you said, like, this wasn't Oklahoma's best year. I mean, it just wasn't. So, they were, but in the end, they were the number 2 national seed in the country. So I said you can't really count that when it comes to Coach of the Year voting, and I get it, but I'm just saying that to say, it wasn't a terrible season for them. But I was very surprised she didn't get that honor, and it would have been nice for her too, because it would have been about an extra $10,000 or so. From a bonus standpoint, she's already hit a few of those markers. She's already going to get a nice little paycheck from the Gamecocks athletics department from after the season for bonuses. But it would be nice for her to get that honor and so forth. But I think she at least feels the appreciation around here for the job that she's done.
I mean, no doubt, John, I look at it, and Florida had 3 players on the first team. Oklahoma had 3 players. Tennessee had more players than South Carolina. Texas had 4 players on the first team, all SEC, and number 1 overall seed Texas A&M only had 2. I mean, I guess it's like everything else. Politics plays a role, but I mean, and then
I was going to say, I don't know the softball world in and out just yet particularly well. Like, this is the first year I've ever done any coverage of it. And honestly, Keith, like, I had never been to a South Carolina softball game before this year. Forget being a member of the media. Like, I was a student here for 4.5 years, and I never went to a softball game. And, never as media before this. I mean, I'm out of the loop when it comes to knowing stuff going on. But, I've heard and understand that there is South Carolina softball's kind of been the team that other teams just kind of pat on the head and say, nice try. And now that, you can't just pet South Carolina on the head anymore, they'll come out and compete with you. I think that there has been, I think that's rubbed some people the wrong way. I don't think they like South Carolina being good. So I have heard that there's some politics and softball can be a little cliquey in terms of coaches. And, that's probably part of the reason why that, some of South Carolina's players didn't maybe receive some of the respect that maybe they should have.
So, she's Ashley Chastain Woodard set the record for wins by a first-year head coach. It's the first time South Carolina's ever been a top 8 national seed. Started 20-0, which tied team record for most wins consecutively start a season. Now they get Virginia, Elon, and North Florida beginning tomorrow. I think South Carolina will face Elon in the second game. South Carolina opened the season with Virginia and got 2 one-run wins. And I was watching that game and the first game, and I was like, man, Virginia, they got it. And South Carolina I quit watching it. South Carolina came back and won. And so it's not going to be a cakewalk to potentially the Supers, where they would match up with number 9 UCLA in Columbia. But this is a team that, if chalk holds through, they will go to the College World Series.
Yeah. And, it's, as you mentioned, those were the first game, and then I think third or fourth game of the year for South Carolina and playing Virginia. And, so the teams have certainly evolved greatly from that point in time. But, every team does scouting reports, and every team has information and puts together the best information that they can going into it. This coaching staff does a great job, a better job than most of scouting opponents and going deep and having those games against Virginia, even if it was at the beginning of the season versus now. Even though that team has evolved a good bit, I think it's probably a good thing for South Carolina, and not necessarily a bad thing that they've played before. So, it's not going to be a cakewalk, as you mentioned. UCLA was very much in that hunt for that 8th national seed, along with LSU that South Carolina ended up getting. But UCLA is coming here, as you said, assuming all the seeds hold. They won 49 games, I believe it was, this season. I mean, they're a damn good team. So it was 49-10. They won 23 games against quad one opponents, just like South Carolina won 23 games. They were 23-7 against quad one opponents. South Carolina was 23-15 against quad one opponents. So UCLA is used to winning as well. That would be a great matchup, assuming that one comes to fruition.
All right, so one men's basketball question for you. Colin Murray Boyles measured in socks, which nobody plays in socks. I get that. But just 6'6". He's a power forward. He does have a great wingspan. We know he's an excellent defender. He's very crafty, but the NBA is about stretching the floor. And I can't name a team maybe other than Golden State with Draymond Green, who's just a completely different animal, who's a power forward that's not 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", 6'11". What does Colin Murray Boyles have to do to be a lottery pick? Because to me, he's not proven he can stretch the floor with the three. I mean, I know he's going to go through the process. I know they have that draft camp where they play. He'll get to prove whether or not he's improved enough to make it. But if you had to put a percentage on it, what percentage would you put on him not being a lottery pick, which I know you wrote on the Big Spur? He wants to be a lottery pick because the money is much greater. If he's just going to be a late first-round pick, he can probably get more money by coming back to South Carolina and working on that three-point shot. We know his girlfriend's Chloe Kitt. She's coming back. Is there a chance, John?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance. I mean, I don't think I think we'll have a better feel for it, after the combine. I mean, a week or so after the combine, when he's starting to get some of that feedback. At the end of the day, there's one knock on him. And I mean, it's obviously a big knock, right? I guess too, you're now labeled as a 6'6" guy instead of a 6'8" guy. And that, I mean, while you don't block shots with the top of your head, that's still not a great thing to look at. He's got the reach numbers, the standing vertical reach is good. The wingspan is good. But I'm with you. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, you don't really see a whole lot of 6'6" power forwards, much less centers. And, that's kind of what he's classified as a 4/5 guy. And then, he hit, three of, we only saw part of the clip. I think they shot all 5 stations. We saw a clip yesterday on Twitter of him shooting 3 stations of 3-point shots, and he went 3 of 15 on those shots. So, that's the biggest knock against him. Perry Clark, I was watching one basketball game that I wasn't at for whatever reason. I don't remember if I was covering baseball or what, but I was watching one game on a stream. Perry Clark, who does some NBA scouting now, also does some SEC network broadcasts, but he was talking about how the word in the NBA circles is he can't shoot now, but he's going to be able to shoot. And that's why he's going to be picked high, is because he does everything so well, and especially on the defensive end. And NBA GMs think he's going to be able to shoot just by watching his shot. So, how's that combine performance going to affect him? Now they've got games and stuff coming up. So we'll see how it all comes together. Like, folks have been writing off Colin Murray Boyles since, halfway through the season of him never coming back here. And I get it. Like, conventional wisdom, even if you're just a first-round draft pick, I say just a first-round draft pick, I'm not knocking it. But conventional wisdom is you go. and you go play pro ball. And I get it. That's not his mindset. And at the end of the day, he's the one making a decision. So, we'll see how it all comes together. I mean, he's still 19 years old. Like he's very mature in some ways. Like when you talk about him on the court as a basketball player, he's an incredibly mature basketball player. He's an incredibly mature person. He's also still a kid at heart. Like he still watches cartoons. Like, I mean, he's still a kid in a lot of ways. I mean, he's got great maturity, but he still has kind of that youthful piece of him. Does he feel like he's ready to go play pro ball? I mean, I guess we'll see that answer here soon. I don't think it's kind of the slam dunk that people say it is. I mean, I ultimately think he ends up staying in the NFL draft. NFL, he'd be a hell of an NFL player too. I think he ultimately stays in the NBA draft, but it's not the easy decision for him that people are making it out to be. So I think there's a chance, and we'll see how it evolves over these next in these next couple of weeks.
No doubt. John, I've kept you too long. I was really hoping I could ask you your thoughts on the 2026 playoff and Nick Saban potentially as the commissioner of college football and a new 16-team playoff. But I know I've kept you long enough. Maybe we can get into that down the road. I can't thank you enough for being so generous with your time today. Be well. And John, I'm hoping in a couple of weeks you're posting the hot board for the next Gamecock baseball coach. That's just me talking, not you. Paul Maneri can take it out on me, but I know he thinks all media are dumb or stupid or whatever the remark was he made. So we'll see. But thanks for all you do and have been doing at thebigspur.com and for being so generous with your time and coming on here with me. Me and our listeners and people watching certainly appreciate it as well. Be well, my friend, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Absolutely. I always enjoy being on the Keith Cast. Take care.
All right. All right. That was the great John Whittle. Changes are coming. The college football playoff. Craig, I hope I answered your question on UCLA. They're not in our regional. In the pairings for supers, they rank the top 16 seeds. And as you know, it's 116, 215, and then you get to 8 versus 9. South Carolina is the 8th seed. UCLA is the 9 seed. If chalk holds, they would be paired in the super regional, and then the winner would advance to the College World Series. So, look, it's hard to believe, but official visits are happening this month, folks. And May the 30th, South Carolina is really June the 6th and June the 20th. They are bringing in a star-studded group of visitors. And South Carolina's dropped a couple. Okay. They dropped a 3-star kid from Jacksonville who it looked like for a good bit he visited for junior day, then visited in the spring, and he set an official visit with South Carolina that South Carolina would land him. He's making his announcement on the 23rd. Visits don't start to the 30th. It's not going to be South Carolina, but I think that's more of a South Carolina thing. I also think South Carolina probably dropped Ben Boulware because I think there's a lot of confidence that 3 players visiting on June the 6th, Aiden and Andrew Harris. Aiden is a defensive tackle from the Charlotte area. His twin brother Andrew, more of a edge player. And then Noah Clark, a big 4-star defensive tackle from Durham, is visiting. South Carolina just offered Dre Quinn, a defensive end out of Greater Atlanta Christian. They also offered a 6'5", 295-pound defensive tackle from Booker T. Washington High School in inner city Atlanta. I think South Carolina likes their positioning with Noah Clark, Aiden Harris, and even perhaps top 2 for PJ Dean from West Forsyth in the Winston-Salem area. South Carolina really needs to sign 3 or 4 high school defensive tackles, and I think they've got a shot to do it. They've got 5-star edge rusher Carter Meadows visiting from Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C. You've got one of the top corners in the country from the DMV visiting, Towson, Maryland. 4-star corner Kari Adams. You've got Birmingham 3-star safety that Torian Gray really likes a lot. That should tell you all you need to know. K1 KJ Johnson, a big 4-star offensive tackle. JB Shabazz from Winston-Salem. He's like 6'7", 295. He's visiting. Chesapeake 4-star wide receiver Travis Johnson's visiting. June the 6th, Landon Duckworth is visiting. The dual threat quarterback, 4-star wide receiver Ryan Mosley. I mentioned Clark and the Harris brothers, but Irmo, defensive end, Julian Walker. His dad's the assistant strength coach at South Carolina and was the head strength coach at Arkansas. And June the 20th, Huntersville 4-star corner Samari Matthews. I think South Carolina is in that. Darius Gray, I know he got a crystal ball to LSU. I mean, the guy's taking 10 official visits. We'll have to see. Desmond Green from Timberland is a guy South Carolina's been battling Georgia for. I think they're in it for him, as well as 4-star Langston Hughes, Fairfield, Georgia running back Carson Baker. There's a connection there with Prentice Air Nolan. 4-star safety from Northwestern, Tamarian Watkins. I mean, just a star-studded group of official visitors in the end of May. In June, and more guys will be added. The Summer of Shane is teed up. SEC meetings are coming up. They're doing the Welcome Home tour. They're going to go right into camps and visits. And coming off a 9-win season where they were a college football playoff contender, South Carolina, what happens? So thanks to everybody for watching live on YouTube. Thanks to John Whittle for being very frank and honest. And I just don't think Palmineri can fix it. And I think a change has got to be made. I think you're just digging a deeper hole if you keep him, but we'll see what happens. I can tell you what will happen. We'll be back next Wednesday morning. If you like the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like us, give us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, podcasts, and join if you want this podcast every single day, Monday through Friday. Join our Gamecock family on Patreon. You can find it even if you just have to use the Google machine, Gamecock Pod Daily. What makes us different is we have a live interactive Zoom call every Tuesday night. We've moved it to 8 p.m. Eastern to accommodate my work schedule and not to interfere with people's family time. That usually lasts about an hour. Then we have an unrecorded overtime where people can really state their opinions. It's probably not PG-13 in overtime a good bit, but there's also a lot of VIP scoop that's dropped. I had a VIP football note on a major prospect last night. Had some intel into the insight and the inner workings of the baseball program and where most of the angst and consternation among parents is coming. So if you want all of that and a lot of football recruiting scoop as well, women's basketball recruiting, I don't think anybody does a better job of covering women's basketball than this podcast. Maybe I'm prejudiced, but usually our biggest shows, the fans tune in when we have women's basketball beat writers on. So at any rate, thanks for being with us, Craig. It's always great to have you on and everybody else. So for special thanks again to John Whittle. I'm Keith Allsep. God bless all of you. God bless America, and go Gamecocks. I'll be back next Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, everybody have a great rest of the week. I'm out of here.